So as its name kind of suggests, the manufacturer Fairphone is all about fairness, making sure that all the bits that go into making up your mobile phone are ethically sourced and that the damn thing actually lasts longer as well to avoid unnecessary wastage. The company's mantra, "We care for people and planet," is definitely one to be applauded. It's certainly a hell of a lot better than my own, which is just let's all get obliterated and hope that everything turns out for the best. Now, 7 years after the launch of the very first Fairphone, we now have the Fairphone 3. It'll cost you €450 direct from Fairphone, or here in the UK you can also snaffle one on Vodafone for £37 a month. Of course, these days you can get an awful lot of phone for that kind of cash, and the Fairphone 3, to be fair, kind of already looks like a bit of a blast from the past. So is it worth your time and money? Well, I've been using it as my full-time personal handset for the past week, and here's my in-depth Fairphone 3 review. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers. So yeah, there's really no getting around it. This mobile ain't exactly pretty. That semi-translucent body, which of course is constructed from recycled materials, is one seriously chunky mother. The Fairphone 3 definitely feels like a throwback to 2014 and those proper slabs that we used to try and stuff in our pockets. It's great for nostalgia value, but not so good if you value comfort and easy one-handed use. However, contributing to that rather unique form factor is the fact that the Fairphone 3 can actually be completely dismantled using a bundled mini screwdriver, which I somehow managed to actually lose during the unboxing of this thing, but let's not dwell on that. I've gone and lost it. I've lost the bloody screwdriver. If you pull apart the Fairphone 3, you can actually replace those internal bits to boost the lifespan of the phone when required, and the most useful part is definitely that pop-out battery. You can grab yourself a spare for just €30 direct from Fairphone, which is great news if you're going to be travelling a lot without access to a charger, while also eliminating the potential problem of diminishing battery life after just a year or two. And while you sadly don't get a charger bundled with a Fairphone 3 to cut down on potential wastage, you will find a rubber bumper stuffed in the box instead. So far though, touch wood, it doesn't seem strictly necessary. I've left the bumper off the Fairphone 3 the entire week I've been reviewing it, and so far that plastic frame has been resistant scratches and scuffs and other stuff like that. But that said, unfortunately, despite sporting a Gorilla Glass 5 coating, the Fairphone 3's screen hasn't fared quite so well. There are definitely a few light nicks scattered about there. And there's no proper water resistance on board either, thanks to that pop-open design, although I've had no issues when busting out the Fairphone 3 in the rain. That rear-mounted fingerprint sensor is definitely on the quirky side, as well as it's housed right up there at the very top of the Fairphone 3. I definitely have been struggling to reach it with my stubby little digits. No worries on the responsiveness though, because once you actually manage to poke the wee bugger, it works a treat. Now that 5.65-inch IPS display is actually one of the most compact on any smartphone launched in 2019, but thankfully it doesn't impact on the general usability of the phone. I mean, when you consider it as actually a pretty standard screen size just a year or two ago. The full HD resolution means you get sharp visuals, while colour reproduction appears perfectly natural, although when you tilt the panel away from your face, those colours do rapidly darken. So just keep the Fairphone 3 steady and you'll get a decent viewing experience for the likes of Netflix and YouTube, helped along by the lack of pokey notch things intruding on the action. And if you want to download some shows to watch on the go, that 64 gigs of storage can be boosted quickly and easily with a micro SD memory card up to 400 gigs in size. And audio here on the Fairphone 3 is actually pumped out of a weird side-mounted mono speaker, but thankfully it's loud enough to cut through any obnoxious background noise. Expectedly, hence I have a lot of test photos of my feet or the wall as seen from a particularly strange sloping angle. And meanwhile, you also have a proper dedicated 3.5mm headphone jack up top if you want to go all wired. Rejoice, rejoice. And good news also for anyone who appreciates a bit of raw virgin Android action. This is a stock version of Google's OS with no tweaks or additional elements to really speak of. Unfortunately, it is also the older Android Pie on here still, which is starting to taste a wee bit stale. Let's hope that Fairphone jacks it up to the full-on 10 before too long. And not just that, but I've also seen a couple of funny little quirks in that UI, such as truncated notifications when you slide down the top bar. And occasionally the Fairphone 3 will simply refuse outright to open an app no matter how much you prod the bugger. And the other day when I connected a pair of wired headphones, I tried using the little remote control thing on the cable, and it just didn't do anything at all. Didn't pause the music, change the volume or anything, so I had to keep on pulling out the Fairphone and doing it using the side buttons instead. And overall, yes, these issues are rather minor in the grand scheme of things, but they do quickly add up, and frankly it is a disappointment. And speaking of disappointment, the Fairphone runs off a Snapdragon 632 platform, the same chipset found in the considerably less expensive Motorola Moto G7 and G7 Power. I found that everyday performance is fine, if occasionally a wee bit ponderous, but definitely don't expect to get a consistently smooth gaming experience even with a fairly respectable 4 gigs of RAM on board. And if you play the likes of PUBG, you will have to keep those graphics on the bare basic level at all times. The 3000 mAh battery stuffed inside the Fairphone 3 also seems a wee bit meagre, especially considering how many budget phones half the price that I've reviewed recently with a 4,000 or even a 5,000 milliamp battery instead. But thankfully, the likes of that energy efficient platform and the stock UI help to contribute to a pretty solid battery life, even when I've been absolutely hammering the Fairphone 3 all day long, using it as a sat-nav, a media streamer, good bit of camera action, all that kind of shenanigans. I've always made it to bed with at least 10% battery remaining. It's only if I'm really hammering it with a good bit of gaming or something like that it dies before I'm tucked up with Teddy. Now, last up is the camera, and once again, unfortunately, the Fairphone 3 starts to feel like a cheap budget handset. That solitary 12 megapixel lens with its f1.8 aperture and Sony IMX363 sensor is highly limited, even compared with phones half the price. If the lighting conditions are on your side, you can capture a respectable amount of detail and accurate colours, but once the contrast levels increase, you can expect lots of murk to creep in, and some oversaturation when shooting against bright skies. I found a lot of my indoor snaps were far too dark to really use. You lose all of that texture and finer detail, and even the Pro mode doesn't really offer much relief with limited control. There's no kind of night mode either to boost the brightness with different exposures, so when the light is seriously limited, you'll basically have to stick on the blind and flash, which of course only really works for close-up subjects. But on the flip side, moving subjects are generally captured with next to no blur, and I had no troubles with the autofocus, so that's something. And of course, the fact that it's only a single solitary lens means you get no ultra-wide angle effort, you get no telephoto option, anything like that, so it's definitely rather limited compared, again, with many phones around the same price point. Similar sort of issues arise when you're shooting video, although you can grab up to 4K resolution footage. Just make sure you stay still while you do so, as the image stabilization is less than stellar. Thankfully, there's no issues, at least that I experienced, with audio pickup, so just make sure that the lighting is alright and you'll get a decent-ish home movie. And last up, yes, there is an 8 megapixel lens up front for all of your selfie needs, which is perfectly adequate-ish. So that's what I think of the Fairphone 3 after using it as my personal handset for a full week. As you can see, there are some serious issues with this smartphone. I love the ethics behind it all, the principles of Fairphone, but unfortunately at this sort of price point there are too many compromises to be made. I could live with the chunky design and everything, but unfortunately the limited camera and performance are just too much to ask. So have you been using the Fairphone 3? It'd be great to hear your own personal experiences, or if you're tempted by the Fairphone 3, it would also be great to hear from you as well. Bung your comments down below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell as well for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a fine week, people. Cheers, love you.